Happify is one of my clients that I worked with when it was these two guys, brilliant entrepreneurs, Ofer Liedner and Tomer Ben-Kiki. They're serial entrepreneurs. They had sold their gaming company, and they had both taken this, gone to this retreat and learned techniques from the science of happiness. And they found that it transformed their lives, and they wanted to bring that to the world, as entrepreneurs often do, in the form of a game. The first thing we started talking about was, well, who is this game for? We can't build it for everybody. So we got to build it for a really narrow group of people first. How are we going to bring it to life? The first idea they had was, well, maybe it's for hard-driving entrepreneurs like us between gigs, because we want it. It's for us. Makes sense. A lot of people think, oh, people like us. That was hypothesis number one. Like you guys wrote down your hypotheses, that's what we did. Hypothesis number two was the one they had first thought of, which was people recently diagnosed with depression. We thought they're motivated, they know they want to, they have a mood issue, they want to be happier. Our game would be great for them. Maybe that's the market we should focus on first. The third hypothesis was based on anecdotal conversations we'd had, myself, some of the founders, with stay-at-home ex-professional parents. We had met 3 or 4 women that had been hard-driving, rising executive types, had kids, and decided they were going to nail having kids. They were going to stay home and be the best mother ever, right? You know what I'm talking about. So these people, I kind of am one of them, except I'm a working mom, but these people wanted to maximize happiness because they wanted to be a good mom. They wanted to be good at it, and it's hard to be a professional person and become a stay-at-home mom. You lose your identity, et cetera. So we thought, maybe those people could be our super fans. So those are quite different groups. And we knew we couldn't start with all of them, couldn't boil the ocean, we had to start with some. So we used these 5 discovery questions, and we actually talked to all 3 groups, and then we got our answer. And the answer turned out to be fantastic for Happify. We used a combination of a 6-question superfan screener, which is part of the Game Thinking Toolkit, but there's various screeners you can use. We also use short focus screening interviews on Skype, some in person, but mostly Skype. And that 2-step screening process, using these 5 questions as guidelines, is what yielded the data that helped us focus on who our superfans should be. So the first question is life situation. Often this is a multiple choice question in a screener. This can also be a question in an interview. It could be either. And this is where you want to figure out, what question can I ask that really defines my superfans and separates them from the rest of the pack? What are the qualities that I actually would sort on? For instance, if you want to talk to both men and women, you wouldn't ask about gender because you want to talk to both. That's not a sorting question. You want to sort your people into buckets so that when you're actually doing the data analysis, you have interesting cohorts. And you also want to start testing your assumptions right away. If you're making an assumption, then this question and the ones that follow can really help you right away. For example, recently I had a client who was building an emoji app, sort of like Kimoji and all those, but she had created a character and a backstory and et cetera, very influenced by Japanese emoji characters. And she thought she was targeting 25 to 40-year-old women who want more love in their lives and want a richer palette for expressing love. That was absolutely her target. So we did a bunch of testing, and we found out from the feedback that came back, I bet some of you already guessed, the people who were really excited about this idea were actually much younger. They skewed younger, because for them, emojis was a language they were already using. There was no learning hump of why would I do this. And plenty of them wanted more ways to express love, but they also wanted more ways to express food and more ways to express everything. So that came back right from the first, and it was challenging for this client, But it was fantastic because right away this assumption she had was challenged, and she pivoted to focus on a different market based on data. For Happify, there were two key questions that ended up surfacing the right data for life situation. One was, have you been diagnosed with depression recently or in the past? That was one question we asked. And it turns out for liability reasons, this is a very important question. The other question that was super revealing, and there's a subtlety here, so I want you to pay attention, is we asked them, so in the last 6 months to a year, have you been coping with a major life change? And then we had a list. This was multiple choice. We followed it up with an open-ended question. Moving to a new city, starting a new job, having a child, changing your work situation, all of those things. Why didn't we just, you might ask, well, why didn't we just ask them, are you, a stay-at-home parent who used to work? Since that's what our hypothesis was. The reason we didn't is, one, we didn't want to skew it. We wanted to actually see if there was a life change that popped out as interesting to us that would challenge our assumptions. One of the things on our list was empty nesters. We almost focused on empty nesters, but it ended up we didn't for various reasons. But they also popped out as having mood issues, really wanting to be happier, et cetera, et cetera. But they didn't have as urgent a need as moms who wanted to be happier so they could be a good mom. And any of you who are moms, you know what I'm talking about here. So that was that life situation was very revealing for Happify. So the next one is existing behavior. And this is really a through line through these questions. People are most revealing not through what they say, but through what they do. So existing behavior is, what are the things, ask yourself, what is it that identifies my early customers as being those leading edge early customers through their behavior? What is it that they do that would help me sort them from the rest of the pack and actually find the people that are going to be most useful for me for my project? So for Happify, this is what we would ask. So when you're feeling low or feeling blue, what do you typically do? And then we would have a list of things. Go to yoga, take my kid to the park, meditate, take a drug, have a drink, use an app on the internet, we just, a lot of things. Again, because we wanted to not steer them and test our assumptions. Then the other one that was super useful is we would say, okay, specifically, what tools and activities make you feel better? And can you say competitive analysis? This is a great question because that'll start to tell you what you're competing with in their life, and it might not be what you think. So the third question is getting into unmet need and really the urgency of that unmet need. A lot of people can tell you, oh, I need your product, I like your product, I'd love to get that. But who are the ones that are actually going to care enough and have an urgent enough need that they would be willing to test out early, incomplete, buggy versions of software, for example? That's a good way to think about it. So for Happify, the question that ended up working for us and soliciting the right feedback was, we would ask them, so how often do you actively seek out some activity to lift your mood? We also tried asking them, how high priority is it to you on a scale of 1 to 5 to lift your mood? We found out that data was much less helpful than asking about behavior. How often? And you can embed that behavior in time, like last week, last Thursday. How often? And this was the question where we started to surface a really important pattern for Happify, which was the number of women that were stay-at-home moms that left the workforce that were using Pinterest to lift their mood. So we started seeing this as a pattern, and then we dug into it, and it ended up being a crucial part of Happify's success. The fourth question is alternatives that they've tried. So people that really have a burning need or an issue are usually trying to scratch that itch, solve that problem. They're doing something. So what you want to know is, what have they already tried? And how'd that work out? It could be an app, it could be anything. It could be a class. It doesn't have to be digital. But again, great competitive analysis. This is the question that really tells you what you will be competing with mindshare for them. So for Happify, what we asked is, okay, specifically, which mood lifting techniques did you try last week? And how'd that work out for you? Tell us about that. This was an open-ended question that we asked, not a multiple choice one. You can ask an open-ended question in either a short screener survey or in a follow-up interview. And this was tremendously useful for us. For one thing, this really shows you the people that are talking about it, but if then they say, well, I'm not actually, when it comes down to it, not really doing much. That is going to be a very tough person to get to use your app versus somebody who's already trying stuff, trying alternatives, is much more likely to want to try something new, which is what you're building. And the fifth question, maybe the very best question for identifying superfans who are useful to you, is the better than before question. This is where you find out, what is this person's appetite for change, for improvement, for making things better? Is this somebody who volunteers ideas? Is this somebody who, when they use an app or when they go to yoga class or when they go running, are thinking to themselves, how could this actually be better? Those people are not everybody, but there's a slice of people in your target market that have that quality, and these people make exceptionally useful play testing and interview subjects. Doesn't mean you do what they say. Let me say that again. It doesn't mean that you do what these people say. It means that they have ideas, and that's what you're looking for. So for Happify, there were a couple of questions we asked, like a 1-2 punch. The first one was, okay, you've told us about these apps and techniques that you've tried. So given all of that, given the alternatives you've tried, what could be better? What could be improved? And then see what they say. Another way to ask this is, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change? So for Happify, we would say, people would often say, well, I like Pinterest. If I'm feeling a little blue and I know I need to take my daughter to the park, I'll go on Pinterest and I'll look at an all-white living room that doesn't have any vomit on it and imagine myself there, those sorts of things. 10-layer 4th of July cake I'll never bake. So, this is aspirational browsing, and it's maybe guys look at cars or different things. But that's the kind of person that you want to try and locate and find. So over the years, I have done hundreds and hundreds of user interviews and surveys with clients. And these 5 questions I found, if you can write them and use them as a guide, will laser focus you and dramatically accelerate your ability to find the right people to help you bring your project to life and really 10x your discovery process. So let's put it all together now. You already started to articulate what I call your product customer hypothesis, which is, who are these? Think of your first 25 to 50 customers. Who are they going to be? What do they have in common? That's your early customer hypothesis.